Good morning. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, August 7th, 2025. I will now ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, July 24th, 2025, and each has informed me there's no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, July 24, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 24, or the record associated with agenda item 26, and approves Wisconsin Power and Light Company's 2024 fuel costs and deferred account balance as filed, and authorizes WPL to recover its deferred account balance on a class-level allocation method and reconcile its deferred account balance over the 3-month period from October 2025 through December 2025.
I move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 7.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 8 through 24.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. In docket 6680 FR 2024, I move we accept Wisconsin Power and Light's 2024 fuel reconciliation consistent with the Commission Secretary's description.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to our one discussion item for today, docket 4220 AF 115, the application of Northern States Power Company of Wisconsin, or NSPW, for deferral accounting treatment of additional excess liability insurance expense of $9.6 million in 2025. So first and foremost, I'm going to start by saying that it is very important for us to clarify what this request is and what it is not. So this request is only a request for deferral. This is not a cost recovery decision, nor is it a determination on the reasonableness of the applicant's insurance cost expenditures. If we were to authorize the requested deferral today, recovery of those costs would be subject to review in a future rate proceeding. Moreover, if it's authorized, the deferral would be for accounting purposes only and would not bind the commission to any specific treatment for any cost in any future proceeding. So because of this, my comments on this item will be cautious, measured, and limited to the request before us to ensure that we are not forecasting nor prejudging a decision that may come before the commission at a later date. There are potentially 2 decision points for us to weigh in on. First, the request for deferral accounting treatment, and if that is approved, then we would need to address the request for carrying costs. As described in the application, after many years of stable insurance premium rates, NSPW's excess liability insurance premiums trended up recently. In 2023, the premium more than doubled, and in 2024, it increased by 400%, which was an increase of $9.3 million in 1 year. At a foundational level, insurance is a critical component of responsible utility operations and risk mitigation and planning strategies. Specifically, excess liability insurance is intended to insure against liability to third parties for events such as property damage and bodily injury to members of the public caused by the applicant's employees, equipment, or facilities. Wildfires are threatening every region of the country. Increased wildfire risk and wildfire-related insurance claims are the primary drivers of the higher premiums in the excess liability markets, and here in this item, they account for approximately 90% of the $9.3 million increase. While the applicant does not currently have any wildfire-related insurance claims, numerous wildfire claims against other utilities across the country are causing insurance markets to differentiate their insurance capacity and increasing the price for the insurance they will continue to provide. In consideration of this, I think it's important that utilities are extremely thoughtful and deliberative in their insurance coverage decisions. The information presented in this docket demonstrates to me that NSPW employs a layered structure to aid this approach, developed and utilizes processes to evaluate their insurance needs, and continues to explore and monitor other insurance options that may result in premium savings. Further, and perhaps most notably, the applicant is undertaking efforts to manage and mitigate wildfire risk and thereby reduce excess liability insurance premiums in the longer term. These efforts include replacing a number of old wood poles and creating a wildfire mitigation plan that would help identify the largest wildfire risks on its system. While there's no statute or administrative code provision that specifically prescribes how the Commission shall evaluate requests for deferral accounting treatment, the Commission has considered the procedures and criteria from an accounting policy statement of position known as SOP 9401 when reviewing these requests. Those evaluation criteria are as follows: whether the cost is outside of the utility's control, whether the cost is unusual and infrequently occurring, whether the amount, if recognized in the year of expenditure, would cause the utility serious financial harm or significantly distort the current year's income, and whether the immediate recognition of the expenditure would have a significant impact on ratepayers. It doesn't have to be all, it can be one or a combination of, and again, this is a policy, not in code or statute. So in my reading and application of this, I did find that NSPW adequately addressed the criteria from SOP 9401 in the following ways. First, NSPW has undertaken efforts to control costs, but insurance premium costs are set by insurers themselves and not directly by NSPW, so outside of their control. Second, these increased costs are recent and much higher than the stable levels of insurance premiums paid for many years prior, thus exemplifying their unusual and infrequent nature. On the whole, the costs are material, and this type of insurance mitigates catastrophic claim cost exposure, which would benefit customers. Therefore, in consideration of the evidence and information presented in this docket, I support the approval of NSPW's request to defer $9.6 million of 2025 excess liability insurance expense as a regulatory asset until a future rate proceeding, which would put me at alternative 1 for the deferral accounting treatment decision. The second decision before us has to do with carrying costs. NSPW requested its deferral include carrying costs at the weighted cost of debt, which is currently set at 2.23% as authorized in docket 4220 UR 126. When considering carrying costs, the commission is tasked with balancing the interests of utility customers and the financial health of the utility itself. Part of that balance involves the length of time costs could be carried and implicitly the timing of a future rate proceeding. Here, questions remain about the timing of when the deferral will be addressed in a future proceeding. When the deferral request was originally made, NSPW raised the possibility that it may have to carry these expenses for more than 34 months, from the February 14th, 2025 filing date in this docket until January 1st, 2028, when rates from their rate case taken up in 2027 are likely to go into effect. The record is still being developed in the ongoing 2025 rate case proceeding, which means it may be possible to consider cost recovery of this item in that current proceeding. But the bottom line is that the timing on this remains unclear. Because we don't know if NSPW will have to carry these costs for an extended period of time, I don't feel compelled to authorize carrying costs today. Also, as part of NSPW's stay-out request in 4220 AF 113, the commission authorized deferrals for expenses that would be reviewed in its next rate case proceeding, which will occur later this year. While the commission approved the deferral request, it did not authorize carrying costs for those deferrals. So in alignment with the commission's approach in that docket, here I did not find sufficient justification for authorizing carrying costs on the insurance premium deferral. So for those reasons, I would not authorize carrying costs, which puts me at alternative 4, do not approve carrying costs. Lastly, NSPW did file comments outside of the comment timeframe noted in the memo, so I don't feel it's necessary to take notice of those comments right now. So I will turn it over to my colleagues, and again, caution against forecasting or prejudging anything from in a future proceeding. Commissioner Nieto.
Thanks, Chair Strand. I got to the same outcome, ultimately, Alt 1 approving the deferral request, Alt 4 not approving carrying costs. I reviewed this carefully. I do believe this one properly falls under the definition of extraordinary, and I'll explain why. I don't think carrying costs are appropriate here. So first of all, with regards to determining that this is extraordinary, I think to some of Chair Strand's discussion, I'll build upon that. We do have to be careful with these deferral requests. We don't have a statute or code that specifically outlines the requirements for deferral requests. We do have an accounting statement of position. We have the uniform system of accounts that provides some definition around extraordinary. And what we do have in law is that it's against the law to do retroactive rate making. And so rates have to be set on a forward-looking basis and can't be set to amortize losses or gains except in extraordinary cases. So it's our job to determine, is this extraordinary? And that SOP helps us determine if something is extraordinary and if a deferral is appropriate. So we have the four criteria that Chair Strand talked about to help us determine if it's appropriate and extraordinary and in the public interest. I agree. I think this is unusual and outside of the utility's control. I think the utility has been proactive in demonstrated that in terms of managing insurance costs. And I think if it did have a way of knowing about this drastic increase that would happen, the utility was already in with a stay-out application right before this time and would have forecasted that in the estimated deficiency clearly. The amount is material relative to net income. And I will just note, for folks following along and listening, I don't believe that materiality is automatically indicative of serious financial harm. We do have to remember, first of all, rates are set on a forward-looking basis. We do expect that budget lines will be overspent and underspent throughout the year. And we build wiggle room into our process specifically for losses, not even for gains, but for losses in two spots. So in rate setting, we use rolling historical averages, and those capture losses and gains. And then on top of that, we authorize an ROE that includes a risk premium, and that helps build additional wiggle room for losses. So customers do pay an authorized ROE on their monthly bills, and part of that covers some risk. So in looking at the significance materiality, I did take into account not only that the amount is material, but also the utility's basis for its request, which is essentially predicated upon we already came in for a stay out. In that stay out, there was an agreement to forego a specific amount of revenues, and if you take this new amount on top of that, you get into a situation where I think in its totality it becomes extraordinary. And I think part of the question that we have to try to get at with this is whether or not the amount is large enough that it kind of eats through those layers of cushion that we build into the process. And I can say we don't really have a sure way of knowing the answer to that question in the middle of 2025. Nobody does. One quarter's financials, quarter one, quarter two, can vary significantly from quarter three, quarter four financials. Utilities might have better sales in certain quarters, higher O&M in certain quarters, et cetera. And that's part of the challenge with single issue rate making and why it's only to be done in extraordinary cases. We don't want customers paying in the historical rolling averages on the going forward rates, plus risk premiums, plus cash for a loss. And in this case, I don't think that's the case, especially looking at what was done voluntarily by the utility in the stay out, taking that together with this. In the stay out, we did do a high level audit and we agreed to the estimated deficiency amounts as a baseline. And we agreed to some going forward accounting treatments to minimize those deficiencies. And now we do have $9.6 million unexpectedly added on top of those deficiencies. And we did in the stay out also note that we appreciated the company having some skin in the game in how it proposed that. And I think when you look at those things taken together, the company's case is even stronger for identifying this as an extraordinary item. That's why I would approve it at Alt 1. And then in terms of those carrying costs, I think that Chair Strand mentioned this as well, but the underlying stay out did not include carrying costs, and that underlying stay out is part of the basis for my decision here. I wouldn't add carrying costs onto this portion either. I don't think it's warranted. I was at Alt 4. I did appreciate the applicant's work to propose a carrying cost rate that it saw as striking a balance in light of its concerns at that time about rate case timing, and took note of that as well. I did not need to take notice of the reply comments either, and also would note that conditional language that Chair Strand noted on what this decision is and what it isn't in terms of recovery versus deferral. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Nieto. Commissioner Hawkins.
Thanks. First, I just want to thank the applicant for clearly explaining the drivers of all of these costs. I thought it was a really clean and detailed application that was really helpful for me personally, and it explained very clearly. I arrived for decision 1 at the same place as my colleagues on Alt 1. For me, I was really clued into the first 2 of the criteria there outside of the utilities control. Clearly, these insurance costs and their drivers behind them are outside of the utilities control, and the unusual and infrequent nature of this increase, as was detailed, there had been a long period of stable liability insurance costs, and that is clearly demonstrating that these increases are infrequent. So that's all it took for me there on decision 1. On decision 2, I'm fine joining my colleagues at Alt 4. I think both of you have explained a little bit more context that was helpful for me there, specifically Commissioner Nieto on the underlying stay out and not including carrying costs there. That's helpful, and also the uncertainty of the timing piece that Chair Strand mentioned. So I'm comfortable joining at Alt 4, do not approve carrying costs as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. So it sounds like we are in the heat of agreement, which means we're ready for a motion.
In docket 4220 AF 115, I move we approve the applicant's request to defer the $9.6 million of 2025 excess liability insurance expense as a regulatory asset until a future rate proceeding consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That does conclude our official business for today. Our next open meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, August 13th, 2025 at 10:30 a.m. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we stand adjourned until Wednesday, August 13, 2025 at 10:30 a.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.